Hey, welcome everybody. What we're going to do here is I will be reading some stories off of the story section from Reddit. What I'll be doing is I will be telling you whether they claim it's nonfiction or fiction for the younger people who might not be aware. If it's nonfiction, it means it's supposed to be true, unless I've got it mixed up. If it's fiction, then it's just totally made up. The first story, it's from My Firebird 64, and it's claiming to be nonfiction. This one is called Roommate. So I lived with this girl for about 5 months now, and I swear she has never taken out the trash, even though she lived by herself for a year prior to living with me. We were just friends and nothing more, but on Thanksgiving I asked her to take out the trash. I swear to God, her response was, "I don't know how to." Another day passed without her touching the garbage. So I told her to take it out, and she once again said she didn't know how. So I said that I would stand there and supervise so nothing went wrong. I just got to tell you, and he's claiming that they're just friends. If she can't suck the chrome off a trailer hitch, or if she doesn't have beer-flavored nipples, this might be an excellent time to pull that ejector seat and find a decent roommate. The only thing she didn't know how to do is to put the bag back in because the bag was a little tight. So I helped her out with that part, but let me know what your opinions are. I already gave them. And that is supposed to be nonfiction. Okay, now this one here, I did these before, and I'm not entirely sure what it was, but I had a lot of noise. So I adjusted some of the settings. Hopefully this one will be a little better. This one was actually a really interesting story. It's supposedly nonfiction. I'll talk about it at the end. Oh boy, do I have a story for you. I told this to a friend last night, and she said I have to post it on Reddit. It's a smidge long-winded, so please bear with me while I take you on the roller coaster. Take you on the roller coaster to the story of Billy the Kitten. This one here is posted by Evie Hart on Reddit. So many years ago, I worked as a live-in caretaker for a woman's cats. To provide minimal backstory, the woman did not live in the same house or even same state as her cats. There were 9 cats. They all had feline aids. The job paid very well. I met my boss maybe twice, and it was incredibly shady and bizarre for a lot of reasons. I can tell you that at this point, when I read it the first time, I was like, first of all, I've never heard of feline aids. I have no idea. I haven't looked it up. I honestly don't know if that's a real thing or not, but okay. But I really don't know. And, this thing that, you got a woman, she doesn't live in the home. Well, that's why there's a caretaker. That is not really that shocking. The fact that she don't even live in the same state. Okay, this seems a little strange, but, I'm not willing to say for sure that this is a bullshit story at this point because rich people are pretty fucking weird. They really are. For one, now this is where he was talking about this. The story's pretty shady and bizarre. For one, I'm unsure of her real identity. She told me a name, but all the mail addressed to the cat house was in varying styles of that name. She also never paid me directly. I had to walk down the street to where her alleged parents lived, who were an elderly German couple who also mixed up her name often. This story is regarding the death of one Billy the Kitten, and it's just a small window into the strange cat lady job I held for a couple years. Okay, now I really don't know the backstory other than what he's telling it, but I can tell you this is really not that strange. If this is a real story, if this is true, you could be dealing with someone incredibly rich, or you could be dealing with a celebrity and or one, because I mean, you take, I think it was Howard Hughes. This is the guy that he was calling it the Hercules, but he came up with a plane and it ended up being called the Spruce Goose. It was one of he created at the time the largest heavy lift capacity plane. And this is a guy that used to piss into mason jars, and he kept them like fucking, he collected them like some people collect baseball cards. So these rich people can be fucking weird. And the fact that there's a fake name, it could be because they're rich. It could be because they're a celebrity, which might entail them being rich. Seriously, you take a look at Kanye West and some of the crazy bouncing off the walls banana shit that mental defect was doing. This wouldn't be that strange when you look at some of the stuff he did. It just wouldn't. It began with a vet checkup for Billy the kitten, my boss's sweet elderly gray cat. He went to his usual vet for an exam. I brought him home that evening and went to bed. In the morning, I woke up to find Billy very unwell and rushed him to the ER vet, where he was eventually put to sleep. The vet spoke with my boss and told her Billy died from his complications with his disease, which my boss did not believe. She called me and told me their theory was they dropped Billy during the exam and he had internal bleeding and they did not want to admit it. She instructed me to go to the vet and pick up Billy's body intact, and we would have a necropsy performed elsewhere. She told the vet not to test or to dissect or take anything from the body, to hold it until I arrived. Now, why they're calling it a necropsy instead of an autopsy, and I think I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not even sure if it's a real word, to be honest, but I think I'm pronouncing it right, doing the best I can. I don't know why she didn't call it an autopsy. I don't get it. Well, after arriving at the vet, I spoke with the receptionist and stressed that the cat must be completely whole. She assured me that they understood and went into the back room, came out with a tiny cardboard coffin, handed it to me, and sent me on my way. Got into my car and called my boss and told her I had Billy. She asked if I checked the body to make sure. I told her the office said they had understood and that the cat would be whole. She asked again if I had visually confirmed this, and I had to pause before answering because I knew what was coming next. As expected, she told me not to leave until I had confirmed with my own eyes.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
So I brought the little coffin back up and requested someone help me open it just to see and explain my boss's wishes, and they told me no way and to leave. I asked if I could just use the back room briefly. Nope. Maybe borrow some gloves? Absolutely not. So I take my little coffin down to my car and just stare at it for a while before using anything and everything to cover the windows to shield the general public from seeing the horrific thing I'm about to do. I called my mom and put her on speakerphone. For moral support, I lifted the lid. Inside was a bag of mush. Just guts and gore and bits. I was a zoology student at the time. I was intimately familiar with what should be there, and through some delicate and sloppy sifting through this corpse, I realized several parts were missing, most notably the head. Yeah. And again, I don't know, but I'm still not convinced that this is completely bullshit. I've run into some strange shit over my course of my years, so, hey. Arms covered in billy slop, I brought my now open coffin back into the vet and dropped it in front of the horrified receptionist and demanded the vet. She ran back and came out looking furious. He came out looking furious. He took me back into an exam room and let me wash off. We both gloved up. This man shoved gooey bits in my face saying, "Here, look, he's all here. Just had to take some biopsies per regulation, but he's all here." Just being a real jackass to me. Until I rattled off the extensive list of missing organs and head. He yelled fine and left the room for a while, came back with a large bag containing the remaining cat parts and sent me on my way. Okay, now if this is true, and again, I don't know, but if this is true, you really got to wonder what that sick little bastard was doing with a collection of body parts. Is he selling them? Is he a freak? I mean, really, in this day and age, who can say? Got Billy back into the car, called my boss again and let her know what happened. She was obviously furious. Told me an address to drive to, and I plugged it into my GPS. I did not have a smartphone at the time, so this was just a random location on a digital map about 2 hours away in the middle of nowhere, Midwest USA. I really hope this isn't my state. All the info I had was that her very good friend worked at this place and would perform her cat's necropsy. Eventually, after driving through flat nothingness for an eternity, okay, that sounds like either Indiana or Iowa. I was instructed to turn into a massive building with sign reading CDC. I was at a massive CDC facility for a domestic cat. I'm really hoping this was before the pandemic. After some instruction from a lovely woman at the front desk through the main entrance, I was directed back into my car through an armed guard booth around the building and in front of what looked like a giant metal wall. I parked and grabbed my cat coffin and walked up to the ramp in front of the wall where part of it opened like a dang garage door, and a tiny old man in a lab coat stepped out to greet me. He asked my name, took the coffin, and walked me inside what looked like a massive and empty airplane hangar with huge metal tables along the floor. He set the coffin on one of the big tables and brought me through a door at the other end and through a series of hallways into a normal office setting. We sat down at the table and he asked various questions about me and my life, my family, school, just nothing related to the cat or anything relevant to the situation. He explained nothing and just interviewed me for about a half hour and suddenly stood up, shaking my hand, and brought me back to my car and told me to go home. Drove home and had absolutely no explanation. A few days later, my boss called and said the necropsy confirmed her suspicions and the vet's office dropping the cat, and she was handling it and thanked me. We lost another cat about 6 months later, and I resigned and moved. If you're wondering things like why all the bizarre, minute details, why the CDC, why the secrecy, I don't have any answers for you. I was paid to do a job. I did it, and I didn't ask questions. There's a lot of other really bizarre details surrounding this job, but this story has always been a favorite of acquaintance. Hopefully you've enjoyed this trauma as well. Thanks for sticking with me this far. I'm going to say, I really don't know. When you read some of the stuff the CIA did, the drugging people with LSD and shit like that, I have no idea. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm not going to say it's not a true story. I really don't know. But it's strange. It's really, really strange. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the ones that I read before because they really weren't that good. This one here is nonfiction. I recently lost my dad. It's posted by Meet My Skeleton. I find myself constantly looking for signs of him. We weren't close the last 17 years, but we got close the last 3 months leading up to his death. I have guilt and regret for not having a relationship with him when I had the chance. Now it's too late. The only thing I'm going to say is it was a few years ago. I lost my dad. He died of Alzheimer's. It was something we saw coming for years as he got worse. And I spent as much time as I could with him. This is my story. It's in reaction to that one. I spent as much time with him. I was working out of state at the time. And the shitty part is now I am pretty sure that I was drugged or poisoned for being a whistleblower. I was working at General Motors in Indiana at the time. And I missed a fair amount of time that I could have spent with him as my health deteriorated. But I did get to spend a lot of time with him, so I actually feel pretty good about that. But I can kind of relate to what he's saying. I can really relate to what he's saying. Okay, now this one here is fiction. So I'm, in my as far as I understand it, that means it's made up. I think I've got that right. It's been a while. Rule number 11, no shirts are allowed to be worn in the pool. And this one comes from MTP 6921. Yosemite was really hot, so I couldn't wait to get to the hotel and just relax in my air-conditioned room with my 2 daughters. We had gotten up early, so we were done with our hiking by 11 a.m., and we got to the hotel at 11:30 a.m. When I got to the hotel, I was really upset that our room wouldn't be available until 4 p.m. My rental car's air conditioner wasn't cooling the air that was being brought into the car, so I called the rental car company and they told me I would have to bring the car to San Francisco for an exchange, since I didn't buy their insurance. I was so pissed because it didn't make sense for me to have to drive 6-hour round trip to exchange cars. That doesn't make any sense, but let's just go on. My daughters were getting really irritable because the outside temperature was over 100 degrees and we had no place to go for the next 4.5 hours. Thankfully, the manager of the hotel allowed us to use the pool until our room was ready. So the 3 of us got changed into our bathing suits, and I always leave my shirt on because I get really self-conscious with my shirt off. The pool looked really nice, but the lack of shade in the pool area made me want to get into the water as quick as possible. There were 2 older men who looked like they were in their early 60s sunbathing beside the pool. I jumped into the deep end while the girls took the steps at the opposite end of the pool. As my fully submerged head and body hit the water, the coolness sent a refreshing shockwave throughout my body. When I came up for air, I could hear a voice saying, "Sir, excuse me, you're not allowed to be in the pool with a shirt on," which was coming from one of the 2 sunbathing guys. Why not? Look at the rules of the pool. I glanced over. The rules were posted by the entrance that included 1, no running, 2, no horseplay, 3, if you are experiencing diarrhea, then don't go in the pool. Okay, I think this is bullshit. I think this is, well, okay, it's a fiction story. Forget it. If you're experiencing diarrhea, don't go into the pool, ... 10, no unattended children. 11, shirts are not allowed to be worn in the pool. As I studied the metal sign, it was blatantly obvious that someone had added rule number 11 with a permanent marker. I never heard of such a rule. Sir, if you're not going to follow the rules, then you and your family should leave. I don't know who this guy thinks he is or why he has to be the rule enforcer. My kids were running around the pool, which didn't seem to bother either, but me wearing a shirt apparently does. I didn't want to make my kids upset by arguing, so I decided to get out of the pool. The water on my skin actually made the hot weather in the sun more bearable. I sat down on a poolside chair as I watched my daughters having fun in the pool. The 2 men were heavily tanned and probably were of Italian or Greek ancestry. They were both obese and let off a New York City type of demeanor where they were always eager to argue. I'm not sure what their relations are to each other. The hot sun continues to beat down on my head and arms, and after about 10 minutes, I'm starting to feel overheated. I don't enjoy the sun, hence why I went to Yosemite versus the beach and why I get up early to go hiking. The pool is starting to look really inviting again, but there's no way I'm taking my shirt off. He must have some of those man titties. Even though I have an average build now, I was the fat kid in the school growing up who was tormented daily for being overweight, so I'm extremely self-conscious if people watch me. Yeah, I think he's got man titties. On top of the ridicule that I experienced, I also had a really uncomfortable and awkward situation happen to me at a Boy Scout camp, where as a prank, the Boy Scout leaders hid our swimming trunks and we had no choice but to go skinny dipping in the lake. The leaders watched us in the lake like how a football coach watches his players on the field, where they would study our every move. Okay, now that sounds a little disgusting. The sun and lack of shade is now unbearable again, so I look outside of the pool area for any type of shade. I see a tree about 40 yards away, and I make my way towards the exit. Whoa, where are you going, pal? You can't leave your kids unattended in the pool. I need shade. The sun's too much for me. Look at rule number 10. I look over at the entrance where the rules are posted and whisper to myself, 10, no unattended children. I look over at my kids to see if they're ready to leave, and knowing that we've only been there for about 15 minutes, I knew that means we have another hour and 15 minutes to go until they want to get out. So I made them go on the hike this morning, which they didn't enjoy. So I can't tell them to get out of the pool on account of me not wanting to take my shirt off. So I reluctantly go back to the chair where I was sitting and debate whether or not to take my shirt off. The 2 men watch me and talk to each other. I start to get more tense from the uncomfortableness of the sun. I really had no other choice but to slowly take my shirt off and place it on the chair. The 2 old men instantly perk up like their horse came in first place at the racetrack. My daughters are oblivious to what's going on as they are playing who can hold their breath the longest underwater. With my shirt off, I now feel as non-confident as when I found out my wife was cheating on me. I awkwardly walk towards the pool as the two men stare intently at me. The two men now have moved to the sitting positions as they continue to talk to each other and stare at me. I don't know why they're staring at me, but I put my arms around my chest like an embarrassed woman would do to cover up her bare breast. Okay, now if this was a real story, if this guy didn't know why these guys were staring at him, they're picturing smearing grease on his ass at this point. So he should really feel uncomfortable. He did the right thing. My kids are still oblivious to everything as they jump and splash in the pool. I see the two men giggling at each other, and I start hearing flashbacks in my head of when kids called me fatty or pork roll. I looked over at the rules again and see how rules 1 through 10 were done by a machine and rule number 11 was done by a marker, which I wouldn't be surprised was done by either of these guys staring at me. Hey, girls, you want to go for a walk or something? No, Dad, it's too hot out and we're having fun, my older daughter responds. The thought of these two old guys staring at me with no shirt on is making me sink inside myself like a kid in there who just peed himself during class. I feel so paralyzed to the point that I can't move. I can now see the two men back in the reclining position as they continue to giggle at each other. I attempted to do a breaststroke in the water, but the sound of their giggles makes me stop after a few yards. I now see the one heavyset man put suntan lotion on the other heavyset man, as my mind instantly goes back to 1990 when the Boy Scout leaders watched me in the lake. They both watched me as the one guy applies suntan lotion to the other guy. Something comes over me where I almost go into a complete trance. I slowly walk out of the pool and towards the two men. I get right in front of them and slowly lower the front of my swimming trunks. Excuse me, what are you doing? One guy says to me. I thought this is what you wanted. Yes, I'm at Bear Creek Hotel and some guy is exposing to me and my friend, I hear as the other guy calls the police. Luckily, my daughters continued to be completely oblivious to everything as they played Marco Polo in the pool. I went and sat down on my original chair and put my particularly wet shirt back on. The police arrived and I told them about rule number 11 where it was explained to me that it was an enhanced hygienic initiative because everyone is supposed to shower before they get into the pool so a shirt wouldn't be considered dirty. The police continues to talk to the two men to see if they want to press charges, and I say, don't worry, girls, everything's okay, as they notice the police in the pool area. Yeah, that's pretty much where he ended. It was actually a good story, but the ending kind of sucked. Okay, this is the last one. This one was posted by Spobe. This is literally the dumbest thing that could happen. He never apparently worked with anybody in management where I worked. Not a short one, but the context is necessary. And around the end of 2018, I started to study, you could say, theories on the logic of if I want to know how to have better social relations with people, then an extreme human behavior could get more subtle hints of how people think and act. And half for my surprise, most of the fandom wasn't like the internet stereotype. I started looking at Twitter and other subs with strong furry influence. Even got some small interviews with a dozen or so random furries online. It was just like normal research. But one thing I kept seeing over and over again was the overwhelming amount of porn, cropped porn, and started to think, why the hell do these furries have this relation to their porn, or YIF, as they call it? And so I started browsing YIF sites. Little did I know how the blacklist in those were important. So I was basically browsing all the posts with no filter whatsoever. I saw things that shouldn't go into other things. Proportions going out the window. Some things worse than a Lovecraftian monster, and a lot of disregard for literally any anatomy of any multicellular organism and some laws of physics. But after a month, those things were becoming as relevant as the fact that the floor is made out of the same thing as the walls and ceiling. But one thing was making a strange pattern for me. 90% of the posts that had some kind of chick with dick fucking dude had her as the dominant. Most of the time, the description of the character had her having an average height of around 6'3". And in most, if not all, the posts that the female character had in that height, the male was always smaller by a factor of, I'd say, a few, 5 or 6 inches. They're saying 30 to 35 centimeters, and I'm just basically guesstimating. But that's just your normal submissive fetish. The real thing is when I saw a chain post in a youth site depicting absurdly big anthropomorphic women, because of course they had a dick, with heights between, heights between 3.5 meters and 20 meters. And again, with submissive males with the average normal everyday height. But it, to me, was a point of actual misery, not being shown, most being shown treated worse than an object. At this point, I started to gloss over the porn aspect of the image and began thinking of the psychopathy of most dominants there. And of course, remember that there are people that get their dick hard with this. And immediately thought about the impotency of the submissive in these pieces of art, the no escape from this torture. You couldn't use a gun, you couldn't run, you couldn't argue, no matter how strong, how smart, and how whatever, you can't do anything about it. All you could do in that dystopia was eat cum and be a fleshlight to a 2 to 5 meter cock. Okay, this one's actually okay, whatever. And that when it hit me, because I never really understood this feeling my whole life, it had always been there with me. But in the background, all the people that have power over me and I can do nothing about it came to light. The reason of all bottled up liquid hate in my blood, even though those images were just fictional images, to me it felt like a character of real life. It had shown me the problems I have in my life and how I'm not impotent over them, or how I can grab them by the neck and solve them, on how you resist the pain. And since then, I've had a significant bump in average amount of happiness per day. And in the end, it actually did help me comprehend social relations better. So, too long didn't read. I literally solved 80% of the problems in my life with furry fetish porn and my brain. Okay. I'm not really, sorry I read this. It was definitely thought-provoking, definitely strange. Absolutely, definitely strange. Peace out. Hopefully this one worked out. If this one didn't, I'm not redoing it today. Hope everybody has a good day, and hopefully you'll stop in for the next one.